We're going to start with an opening prayer. And that's going to be led by Pastor Tim Hogg. He is the pastor of the Father's House, so if he'll come forward to do the opening prayer for us.
Our Father in heaven, it's days that are very serious that we live in today, and we come to you because there is none greater than you. And we know that you are the answer to every situation. And tonight as we join together, we ask you that you will reveal what is your truth in every subject that is discussed. Father, we ask you that you will reveal your love for us in the midst of all that we deal with. And we trust you and thank you for the opportunity to be able to be a part of what you're doing in this world today. We thank you that you've called us to make a difference, and I ask you to give us the grace to do so. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Now we have the Boy Scout Troop 973, First Baptist Conyers, going to present the colors for us.
Stand, please.
Will everyone remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You can be seated. We now want to introduce candidates. If I can have Lynn Brown. She's the first vice chair of the Republican Party, come forward and introduce the candidates.
Okay, I see one. Are there any other candidates here? Please stand up. All right, y'all, we have Representative Tom Kirby. He's our current incumbent for the new 114th district. He is running for re-election, and we appreciate him coming tonight. Since we have a conflict tonight, there's two other things going on. There's something going on with the VOC, and there's also the Rotary Club, installation of officers and ballots. So, thank y'all, and thank you, Tom.
At this time, I'm going to introduce Ed Tracy. He's got a couple announcements, and then we're going to introduce our speaker.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Some familiar faces here and some not so familiar faces, so that's really good. I think tonight we're going to learn an awful lot together with the program that we put together here. I want to just mention a couple of things. First of all, that make sure that you've signed in, and if you make a donation. Also, I want to mention that this video is being videotaped tonight. Will be on my website at edwardctracy.com, which is a local news internet channel. Over 365 videos that we've posted there over the past 13 months of local government meetings and events and South Rockdale Civic Association meetings. I want to mention the president of South Rockdale Civic Association is here, Don Meyer. He's sitting in the back. We've had some phenomenal programs at South Rockdale Civic Association in the past, and especially under Don's leadership, from beekeeping to having a debate with the judge candidates last time this month. So next month we're going to have a really interesting meeting. It's about the education system in Rockdale County, and you'll all want to be there. And the meetings are held at Union United Methodist Church on the third Tuesday of every month. So I think it's July 17th, this coming month of July. And it is really going to be a powerful program. And you're going to learn about what goes on in the schools, the interaction with kids and with external groups that come in and deal with kids and try to help with kids in need. And we're going to have some information, I think, that'll really wake up the citizens of Rockdale County. Also want to just mention to you that on July 16th, is it
Saturday, I believe is
the 14th is the T-Splosh rally, right?
Anti-T-Splosh.
And the anti-T-Splosh rally. There's a lot of information on my website about that. There are signs there, no T-Splosh. Garvin Haynes and David Shipp actually got together and partnered up on both sides of the aisle. There's many Democrats and Republicans that are opposed to this, and there's a lot of reasons why. You'll want to come to that meeting and learn all about it. And those signs were paid for by those two gentlemen, so if you'd like to have one of those signs, it's $5, and that money goes directly to those guys before you leave. So now I want to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is, I got to meet and get to know our speaker a little bit. Yes, Nick, Don?
There's also another anti-T-Splosh rally at 901 Main Street at 9 o'clock on July the 10th. So if you can't make the other one, you can try that one.
Okay, and that's on July the 10th?
July the 10th on the sidewalk in front of the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, and now I want to introduce our speaker who's come all the way from Woodstock, Georgia today. You know, it's on the other side of I-20 and on the other side of I-85, and you know, you're going to get through some traffic at the time of day he came down here today. We thank the Boy Scouts, by the way, for coming here tonight. That's Boy Scout Troop 973 from First Baptist Church right down the road where CJ and I, some of you attend. So anyway, David Boris has been in public service for over 45 years, having served most recently as the Chief of Police for the City of Woodstock from January 2009 to December 2011, and previously as a senior officer and member of the command staff of the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office from 1993 to 2009, where he held the rank of major over the agency's headquarters activities. He also served for 23 years in the Army's Military Police Corps, graduating from Southern Police Institute, and holds 2 Masters of Science degrees in Criminal Justice and Public Administration. He is a member of the Adjunct Faculty of Criminal Justices in Kennesaw State University, has taught at Reinhardt University and Georgia State University, and is post-certified general instructor. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce a really great guy, Chief David Boris.
Well, I got to hand it to you to come out tonight after getting that whammy this morning. Who you are? Good, good. Well, we're here tonight to talk about another bad topic, Islam. Islam means to be submissive. That is the name of the religion practiced by 1.3 billion Muslims. And in particular, I want to talk about Sharia law. Sharia law is the law of Islam, and it looks something like this. This is the book that is called The Reliance of the Traveler, and it is the recognized version of Sharia law for both the Sunnis and Shia sects, and practiced by, to some degree, by all Muslims. So in particular tonight, I do want to talk about that aspect of Sharia law is probably the most onerous to us and probably the most misunderstood, and that's Sharia law that pertains to jihad. Jihad means to struggle. And we'll talk about what kind of struggle in just a moment. Now, I suspect we all have a common history when it comes to Islam. If you're like me, prior to 1993, you didn't give 2 hoots about it. When I left the military in 1991, I couldn't even spell it. Didn't know the difference between Islam, a Muslim, an Arab, but I do now. Now, our first encounter with Islam occurred on 1993 when the first World Trade Center bombing occurred. And does anyone remember what we were told at that time when that occurred? Well, we were told, don't worry, this is a criminal offense, and our law enforcement agencies, particularly the FBI, will take care of it for us. And they did. They did. They took care of it. It wasn't too long after that arrests were made. So if you were like me, hit the snooze button, went about our normal business. And of course, there were all sorts of incidents involving Islam and terrorist attacks outside of the United States, but nothing occurred of any significance that we had to worry about within our country. Until, that is, September 11, 2001. And that's when the World Trade Center was attacked and also the Pentagon. President Bush again said, don't worry, Islam is a religion of peace. In fact, he even also told us right after that, go shopping. Go back to our normal lives, we'll take care of the problem. But we are not at war with Islam. Currently, we're told that the only threat we have to worry about is Al-Qaeda. Formal terrorist groups. Well, again, our president tells us we're not at war with Islam and we don't have to worry about it. Well, unfortunately, there have been numerous events that cause us all some concern. I've just listed a couple of them up there, but there have been 655 domestic indictments for terrorism since 2011. Now, not all of those have been for violent acts. Some of them have been for supporting terrorist acts through financial methods. But nonetheless, that is a sizable number. But our current administration tells us, don't worry, these are all isolated cases, not related to Islam. In fact, we were even told after the attack at Fort Hood, Texas, that this was an act of workplace violence. That Major Hassan, by the way, his name is not even mentioned in the Department of Defense report of that incident. Nor is it mentioned that he was a Muslim, nor is it mentioned that he is a practicing Islamist. The way it is conveyed in the report is the perpetrator of the criminal act. This is a terrorist act, and it needs to be addressed as such. So the point is, what are we to believe about Islam? We're told it's protected by the First Amendment because Islam is a religion, and Islam is a religion. And we'll talk about that part that is covered and that part that is not. But before we do, I'd kind of like to talk a little bit about the various faces of Islam so that we have some understanding who is involved in it. Now, I'm going to build a pyramid for you. And the bottom portion of the pyramid consists of what I refer to as secular, progressive, or liberal Muslims. They're also sometimes referred to as cultural Muslims. Now put your hat on for just a minute and think about your own religious practices. I don't care if you're a Christian or Jew, a Baptist, a Presbyterian, a Methodist. For most people, their religion is in fact secular. It is not all-consuming, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, although it is very important to you. Nonetheless, it doesn't rule your life. Your religion is peaceful. You coexist with your neighbors. You coexist with others of other faiths. You want desperately to get along, to live your lives the way you would like to live them in peace and in harmony. This is very true for secular or cultural Muslims. And I firmly believe the majority of Muslims in our country, at least, fall into this category. They have provided a great deal of help to law enforcement, to those who do not believe as they do. Many of the arrests of those people that perpetrated the crimes that we talked about just a moment ago, all those 655 of them, came from information relayed to us by secular Muslims. They too want to coexist. Many of them are trying to flee Sharia law as practiced in their home countries. They know it is bad. So I don't want to paint the picture or leave you with the idea that we can paint Muslims with one brush. We cannot do that. And we'd be doing a great disservice to ourselves and to them if we do. Now the next group are ones we need to be concerned about. These are the ones that I call fundamentalists. These are the ones who believe in 7th century Islam as practiced by Muhammad, the last prophet, the greatest prophet, the one that Muslims are told to model their lives after. These are the Muslims who believe verbatim everything is stated in the Quran. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. These are the ones from whom the radicalization process can take place and we can turn people into violent extremists. The lone wolves, if you will, the individual attackers, if you will, like Major Hassan and others, the shoe bomber, the Times Square bomber, all of those that we've heard about, and many more, they come from this group. They believe in 7th century Islam. And they believe that it is the supreme law of the land, of the world, and it's up to them to make sure that we all abide by it. There's another group that we need to be concerned about. They're also fundamentalists, but they are not violent. These are the Muslim Brotherhood, and we'll talk in some detail about the Muslim Brotherhood in just a moment.
You said they're not violent?
Non-violent. And the last group, of course, are those radical, extreme Muslims, the Al-Qaedas, the members of terrorist groups that use violent acts. And we're all very familiar with them. So you can see that there are different complexions of the faces of Islam. And I want to make sure that I draw a very distinct distinction, if you will, between the fundamentalist Islam, Muslims that we need to be concerned about, and those secular Islams that we can be friends with, and they will provide information to us. Now let's just talk real briefly about the 5 pillars of Islam, because these are the pillars that comprise their religion. And I will submit to you, these are what are protected by the First Amendment. The first one is a monotheistic religion, one God, and the greatest prophet, Muhammad. And they believe that he is to be worshipped and worshipped alone. Prayer 5 times a day. They give in charity. They call it zakat. It's 2.5% of their total wealth, not just their income, of their total wealth they're expected to give every year. Fasting, Ramadan. We've heard about it. Ramadan commemorates when Muhammad first received the revelations of the Quran. It also commemorates his first battlefield victory, and it also commemorates the time when he left Mecca for Medina, and the importance of that I'll reveal to you in a moment. And lastly, pilgrimage. Pilgrimage where all Muslims are expected to go to visit Mecca at least once in their lifetime. That is their holy city. So let's focus a little bit on jihad. And this is what I submit to you is not protected. As I said earlier, jihad means to strive or to struggle. To strive or struggle in the ways of Allah and Muhammad. Now there's one meaning about, that we're told repeatedly, that Jihad means an inner struggle of self-improvement in our society. There's another meaning, and that is a call to action to promote Islam. But as long as it's not for personal gain, when I say promote Islam, to promote it in a way that establishes it as a world religion. Jihad also means to defend themselves as well as to spread Islam throughout the Dar el-Harb. Now you have to know that the world for Muslims, as written in the Quran, is divided into two worlds, two houses. The house of Islam, Dar el-Islam, and the Dar el-Harb is the house of war, and those are the areas that are not controlled by Islam. The first jihad took place when Muhammad was still alive, when he conquered the Arabian Peninsula. The next jihad took place after his death by his successors who spread Islam by force throughout northern Africa, into Spain, and into France, and eastward through the Middle Eastern countries, through Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and into India. That area that they conquered was larger than the Roman Empire. Let's talk a little bit about the inner struggle, because we hear a lot about it, but this is what it really means. That the peaceful jihad is its true meaning, its only meaning, and some call it the greater jihad, or spiritual warfare against the lower self. Now we all know what that means, because we all have it. We all struggle with temptation, with our inner struggles of daily life. And this is one of the reasons why it's so easy for us to accept it, because we identify with it. Unfortunately, this form of jihad is not found in the Quran. It's not supported doctrinally. Surprise. So where did it come from? Well, we've got a perfect storm. Secular Muslims believe it. That large group that I talked about, this is the form of jihad that has special meaning for them, and this is what they practice. And that's fine. None of us have a problem with that. Our apologists, our liberals, our academic friends, all those on the ultra left will tell us this is the true meaning. That we don't have to worry about Islam because it is an inner struggle. And perseverance for faith is always tough. That's what they tell us. And lastly, the fundamentalists tell us this is what it means because they want us to believe it. They want to deceive us. Now, there is a principle in Islam called deception or lying to promote the religion. It's called taqiyya. So they purposely lie, they purposely deceive, if it's to promote the religion. Sometimes go on YouTube and watch a leader, a Muslim leader, give a speech in English and then give the same speech in Arabic to his followers, and you'll see a tremendous difference from what they tell us and what they tell their followers. The head of the Palestinian Liberation Authority, who we are trying to get to negotiate with Israel, listen to some of his speeches that are translated in Arabic. How militant he is and how much he wants to destroy Israel. And then watch the same speech that he gives to us. Entirely different. So taqiyya, or the purposeful lying or deception to promote Islam, is a principle found in the Quran. What I'd ask you to do, the test question, will you immediately go to paradise if you're successful with your inner struggle? How many know the only way that a Muslim can go to paradise? The only way that a Muslim is guaranteed immediately to go to paradise, all sins are forgiven.
Kill the infidel. Kill the infidel.
It is fighting for Allah, fighting for jihad on the battlefield. It is the only way. This is one of the reasons why you have so many suicide bombers. It's another reason why so many suicide bombers just prior to committing the act let their hair down, visit prostitutes, strip clubs, or whatever, because they know they'll be forgiven, even though they're violating several principles in the Quran. All of the 911 bombers, for example, or the majority of them, did just that, because they knew that they were going to go immediately to paradise and reap the rewards that we've all heard of. But that is the only way you go to paradise. If you win that battle, not the inner battle. Another test question you might want to ask a Muslim, if you want to know what side of the argument they're coming on, is, do you support the right of Israel to exist? Ask them that question. All right, let's talk a little bit in the specifics, the difference between Mecca and Medina. We're going to talk about Muhammad now. Now, Muhammad started to receive the Quran in the year 610. The Quran has 114 chapters. The first 86 were received while he was in Mecca. These are the peaceful verses that we find in the Quran. We have to understand something about Mecca. Mecca was a very heterogeneous major city then. It consisted of three major groupings. One, pagans, the worshippers of the some 360 gods. And then they had small tribes of Jews and Christians. So it was quite an eclectic group in Mecca. And Muhammad was wearing his theological hat. As I said, all the verses were peaceful, accommodating. In fact, so accommodating that he told the Jews that when we Muslims pray, we will face Jerusalem. He was trying to accommodate the faith to the Jews. Well, he didn't have a lot of success. The first 12 years, he was only able to convert 35 people. They had enough of them in Mecca, and they kicked him out. They ran him out of town. That's why the year 622 has such significance to Muslims. That is the first year of their calendar, 622, not 610, when Muhammad first received the revelations of the Quran, but 622, because something changed quite drastically in that year. Not only was he run out of Mecca to Medina, but he received the last 28 chapters of the Quran. And this is where all of the violent verses are found. All of the violent verses. In fact, this is where Muslims are commanded to subjugate non-believers. Non-believers are given three choices. One, convert. Second, submit. Or three, face death. Now, you're sometimes told that there is no compulsion in religion. That the Muslims will tell you there is no compulsion to join Islam. That verse is found within the first 86 chapters. Now, probably asking yourself, what's the significance of all this? Which verses take precedence? We're told the Quran is a perfect book. It does not contradict itself. So how can it be that we have violent verses under Medina and non-violent verses in Mecca? Well, there's a principle called abrogation. Abrogation. The latter verses abrogate or supersede or negate all of the previous verses. So all of the peaceful verses that were revealed to Muhammad when he was in Mecca have been abrogated by the violent verses received in Medina. I'm sure you understand that distinction. But the violent verses now are the basics of the theology. Let's take a little bit look at the offensive nature of jihad. Where did it start? Against the Jewish tribes. Now this is where anti-Semitism was birthed. Remember I told you the Jews rejected Muhammad when he was in Mecca. Muhammad carried a grudge. When he went to Medina, there were 3 Jewish tribes. 2 of the Jewish tribes he ran off. The 3rd he had battled with, and after they submitted, he beheaded between 700 and 900 Jewish men. 700 and 900 Jewish men. It was genocide. He took all the women and children as slaves. Remember, Muhammad is considered the perfect man, the one to emulate. I give you a couple of samples of the verses that are found in the Quran that talk and substantiate the violence. And the last one is called the verse of the sword. Surah 9:5. It is the one that's frequently quoted. It says, slay the pagans. Well, that doesn't mean Christians, does it? Yes, it does, because Christians believe in 3 gods, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. So we're pagans to Muslims. Okay? Lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war. Every stratagem, not only violent strategies, but non-violent as well. Deception through propagation, such as going on in Europe, where the birth rate is increasing tremendously with Muslims. It is estimated in the next 40 years the Muslim population in Europe will be the majority population. And they're doing it through reproduction. Now, one thing you probably notice here, that these numbers of the verses, chapter 9, chapter 8, chapter 4, they must be Medina verses. No, they're not. You have to understand, under the 114 chapters in the Bible, they are not organized chronologically. They're organized by size. The largest chapters come first. The smallest chapter, which is only a page long, is last. Chapter 9, verse of the sword, which is all violent, was the next to the last chapter revealed to Muhammad. The next to last. It's a relatively, but it's a very long chapter. So it got bumped up to number 9. Okay. They're organized by size, not chronologically. Now you remember 9-5 because just think of Sally Parker's movie 9 to 5, all right? The bottom line of all this is jihad to establish Sharia law is accepted and practiced by the fundamentalists. They understand this meaning. And this is the aspect of Sharia that it should not be protected, is not protected. It's sedition. And I'll show you specifically why. This is why we must exercise due diligence to protect ourselves. Now, I read something very interesting the other day, that our Constitution does not protect itself very well, and it does not. It does not. We guarantee so many rights, and they can be used so many different ways. And the First Amendment is being used to shelter all of Islam, and it should not. The 5 pillars, absolutely. Jihad, no. This is the jihad that was practiced by Muhammad. This was the jihad that was practiced by his immediate successors, who went forth and spread Islam by force. They did not use peaceful means. They spread by force. It was an equestrian blitzkrieg. And they were able to go so fast and conquer so many lands because they fought on horseback because they used stirrups. Their foes did not. Their opponents had to fight on the ground, not on horseback. They knew how to fight on horseback. And this is why they were so successful so quickly. And in a relatively short period of time, within 400 years, they had literally conquered all of North Africa, through the Middle East, into Spain, into France. Very quickly. So, we're faced with two views of jihad. That Islam is a religion of peace, and all we have to worry about are these little pesky little radicals up there, the terrorists. This is what we're told. This is the line we're being told by our administration right now, to focus on militant, violent jihad, as practiced by Al-Qaeda. There's another way we can look at it. I think it's a more accurate way. That jihad is part of the DNA of Islam. Jihad is part of the DNA of Islam. Secular Muslims do not accept that. They believe and practice that form of jihad, which is an internal struggle, and that is fine. That is fine. But the fundamentalists are practicing true Islam. So, this is an historical battle. It's authorized in the Quran, practiced by Muhammad, and the objectives are very simple. Liberate all Muslim lands, unify all Muslim states under one, and that's what we see going on right now. This is unraveling before our very eyes. This Muslim spring, watch it, may take some time, but now they see an opening that they can unify all of the Islamic states under one banner. And lastly, to spread Islam throughout the world under Sharia law. So the Grand Jihad, the one that we're facing with, there are two versions to it, and we're confronted by both simultaneously. One is very violent. It's practiced by the foreign terrorists, the Al-Qaedas, and it's also practiced by the lone wolves, the independent actors, the second and third generation Muslim men who have been born and raised in this country or in the West. And they change through the radicalization process. I'm not going to get into that, but it is a very specific process whereby they will now commit violent acts in the name of Islam, because they believe and bought into 7th century Islam. They found a form of Islam called jihadi Salafism. Sometimes it's also referred as Wahhabism. Wahhabism is the form of Islam practiced in Saudi Arabia. This is the direct attack, the overt attack, the 9/11 attacks, and all of the rest of the terrorist attacks by terrorist organizations that we've read about, experienced throughout the world. And on the other side, we're faced with nonviolent acts. We're talking about mainstream Islamic front groups that promote Islamization by truthful disinformation. Taqiyya, in other words, the lying and deceit that we talked about. A great deal of money comes through Saudi financing. The Muslim Brotherhood is the exponent of this form of jihad. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood feels that Muslims, certainly in the West, are not strong enough to exert violence. So they've adopted a stealth way to do it, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. They too follow jihadi Salafism, but they use peaceful means to do it. The indirect attack. So let's talk a little bit about the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States. It's alive and well. It's been here since 1968 or 69. Can anybody tell me what the first Muslim Brotherhood group formed in the United States was? The Muslim Student Association at the University of Illinois. They started purposely with college students. The Muslim Brotherhood came to the United States as they came into Western Europe because they were run out of Egypt. The Egyptian government under Nasser and others was primarily a secular government and ran the Muslim Brotherhood off. So some came here, some came to Europe, others went underground in Egypt, and now have most recently raised their head to the point where they have now the presidency of the government of Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood was formed in 1928. So they've been around for a while. They've been very patient in waiting. So in the United States, they've been here for a long time too. And they've been forming many groups, many front groups, and we'll talk a little bit about those in a moment. This is what they're here to do. These are their words, not mine. They can't make it any clearer than that. The purpose to destroy our miserable house. By our own hands. They're going to use us to do their dirty work, and I will tell you some ways that they're doing that. One way they do it is through political correctness. We're told that it's not politically correct to do what I'm doing tonight. When I was the chief of police, I wrote a couple of articles about we're being deceived. I wrote them for one of those local monthly publications we all get, Life in Woodstock, Life in Conyers, whatever it is, you know, those magazines. Both articles were very, very well received. I had a lot of compliments, a lot of emails, positive. Finally, someone speaking out. One dissenter. Self-proclaimed Christian. Wrote an email to the city manager, to the city council, and took exception and said that I was violating the First Amendment rights of Muslims. Political correctness run amok. So we're being silenced. By our own hands, they will defeat us. Let there be no doubt the ultimate objective is to impose Sharia law on us. Now you may not know this, but already in our courts, over 50 court cases in 23 states have used Sharia law in this country. 50 times a judge has allowed Sharia law to be used in his courtroom in this country. Not in Georgia yet. By our own hands, we will be defeated. And this last statement was made to Muslim Brotherhood followers. Make sure you understand what we're saying here. Make sure you understand. Now, they call it civilization jihad. It represents a civilization alternative to what we know through settlement. These are their words. Through the settlement process, they will do those things. They will integrate Islam in the United States with firmly rooted organizations. The Muslim Student Association is on virtually hundreds of campuses in our country, to include the University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, Georgia State, Georgia Southern State. They have ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. Mosques and Islamic centers are critical to this process. I've seen figures that up to 85% of all mosques in this country are financed some way from Saudi Arabia. Follow the money. And with the money comes strings. money, they choose who the imam is and what's taught. And what's more importantly, what's taught to school children, young Muslim children, at the mosque. It's controlled. The number of mosques that have risen in our country since 9/11 virtually have doubled. We have some 58 in Georgia. All of this represents sedition under Title 18 United States Code. You do not have to commit a violent act to commit a seditious act. You can do it through speech, through writings, through money, through finance. This is sedition. It is not protected. Their aim is to supplant our form of government, our Constitution, what they believe is the supreme law, Sharia law. So how do we know this? Some of you are asking, David, how do you know all this? You making this stuff up? No, I'm not. It was all entered as evidence in the Holy Land Foundation for trial, 2009 in Texas, by the Department of Justice. Our Department of Justice. Well, this trial actually was started under George Bush's administration. It was culminated under the current administration. The Holy Land Foundation was a cover. It was ostensibly a charitable organization to funnel money into Palestine to be used to help refugees and people who were victimized by war. Unfortunately, $12.4 million was funneled to Hamas, not to those in need. And that's what they were convicted for. Only 5 people were convicted on 108 charges. They're currently in jail for that. There were some 307 unindicted co-conspirators. And not one of the co-conspirators, either the individuals or the groups, have been brought to trial by the Obama administration. They refused to take them to trial. The U.S. Attorney in Texas wanted to initiate criminal charges against the Council of American Islamic Relations, CAIR, and he was told not to. So all this evidence sits. All of this documentation, some of which I just showed you, was entered into evidence and it was not contested at this trial. These are Muslim Brotherhood documents that were seized by the FBI in Virginia. So the Council of American Islamic Relations, the spokesperson for the Muslim Brotherhood in our country, is still alive and well. Its headquarters is 3 blocks from the Capitol, and many of our congressmen, many of our presidents have allowed these people to speak for Muslims. Both George Bush and Bill Clinton allowed spokesmen of the Council of American Islamic Relations into the White House to speak. One of them was a man by the name of Al-Moody, currently serving in prison 23 years for attempted assassination. He was allowed not only in George Bush's White House, but on his ranch in Texas. This is how seductive they are. How many of you Republicans out there know Grover Norquist? Ever heard that name? You know what his claim to fame is? CPAC, Conservative Political Action Committee. They have an annual conference in Washington every year. He's tied to Al-Moody. He has ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, and yet he is a Republican conservative operative. By our own hands, they will defeat us. So in conclusion, jihad has evolved through progressive revelation or abrogation. We talked about that. In Mecca, it was basically turn the other cheek. In Medina, at first was used defensive jihad, and then later the verses turned very offensive. And that's what Muhammad and his followers have practiced. The 5 pillars are protected, that we talked about, but jihad, to wage war, is not. It's sedition. And all other aspects of Sharia that violate U.S. laws. So let's just take a look at some very briefly. I know it's getting late. The first is violence against women. When I was chief of police at Woodstock, we had a case of domestic violence involving a Muslim couple. And the Muslim man told our officers when they reported to the scene that this is permissible for me to beat my wife under Islamic law. And it is. The Quran allows it. Pedophilia. Pedophilia. Muhammad married his last wife when she was 6 years old, consummated the marriage when she was 9. Remember, Muhammad is the perfect man. His practices are to be emulated. Child abuse is prevalent within fundamentalist Islam. No-fault rape. If a woman brings charges of rape, a Muslim woman, she's immediately charged with adultery. Unless she can produce 4 Muslim men who witnessed the act. That is the only way she gets a pass. Otherwise, it's her fault. She enticed the act. She is blamed for the act. The Muslim man is not. Honor killings. If a Muslim woman is raped, the honor of her family is now tainted. It's up to the men of that family to seek retribution by killing the victim. Honor killings. And it's going on in this country. Remember, they have an honor-shame culture. Ours is a right-wrong culture. And let me tell you what I mean by that. There's probably not one of us who has not been laid awake in the early morning hours, actually petrified of something we've done that nobody else knows about it, but we know it's wrong. And we feel terribly guilty over it. It bothers us. We've all done it. Not so for Muslims. They only feel shame if somebody else knows about it and their honor is jeopardized. So the act itself makes no difference. It's whether or not the act brings dishonor or shame to the family. And the honor of the family is up to the woman, not up to the man. The man will regain the honor if it's lost. It's up to the woman to keep it. Court testimonies of females. In some Muslim courts, female testimony is not allowed, but if it is, it takes 2 females to testify against 1 male to have the same value. Polygamy. Under Islamic law, men can have up to 4 wives. Plus what your right hand possesses, and that's doublespeak for slaves. You can have as many slave wives as you can afford, but only 4 Muslim wives. And then lastly, providing charity, material assistance to what they call freedom fighters or terrorists. That too is in violation of U.S. law. The Muslim Brotherhood is actively pressuring the Obama administration to get that portion of our law changed so that their charitable givings to freedom fighters can resume. And lastly, the killing of apostates. Anyone who leaves the Muslim religion is subject to death. This is one of the reasons why so few Muslims speak up. Because they do feel threatened. So, I know this is a busy chart, so let's first This is what we face. Right now, the West is totally focused on the Al-Qaeda's, that form of jihad. The overt attacks by terrorist groups. That 10% that we talked about at the start of the discussion. We are failing to recognize this threat of the Muslim Brotherhood that has been here since the early 1960s. And lastly, we are not recognizing what is being attempted through the United Nations. Right now, the Obama administration is thinking about entering a treaty with the United Nations that would forbid us from carrying handguns. Now, obviously that will take the ratification of Congress. But nonetheless, what we can't do through our own laws will be done through international law. There is more and more pressure being placed upon us to recognize some of these groups, all dominated and controlled by Islamists, to influence our way of life. Our current update that I want to give you so you will understand what we're up against. House Bill 242, American Law in Georgia Courts Act. This is a law that many of us here, worked very hard to try to get passed in Georgia, in the Georgia legislature last term. And that would forbid the use of any foreign law in Georgia courts, to include Sharia law. Well, it passed the Judiciary Committee, and it passed the Rules Committee. It was brought to our Speaker of the House, Representative David Ralston, but he refused to bring it to a House vote. Even though he promised the author of the bill, Chris Coomer from Cartersville, that he would do it. So it languished. It did not make it to the floor of the House for a vote. Senator Chip Rogers from Woodstock, who is the Senate Minority Leader, made a pledge to the Canton Tea Party 2 weeks ago that he would sponsor this legislation. Folks, you've got to get behind this. This is something that we need. It's terribly important. And if you could send Senator Rogers an email just encouraging him to bring this up, American law in Georgia courts, I know that he would be greatly appreciated.
What was Ralston's reasoning for failing to bring it?
There were several reasons. One, he said that there were several Jewish groups against it because, as part of the coalition that we had put together for support of that, we had a lot of Jewish groups. I've spoken before Jewish groups, and no one knows of any Jewish group that would be against this. Obviously, they have reason not to have Sharia law in Georgia courts. It's ridiculous. The other reason we were told is the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution. Our Attorney General, Sam Owens, told us specifically that the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution prohibits this. Well, if that's true, how is it being used in other states?
Right.
It's being used in other states.
Right.
So we need local law. Now, most recently, 5 members of the House, Lynn Westmoreland, who is a representative from Georgia, along with, have requested the Inspector Generals of major government departments to investigate the penetration of the Muslim Brotherhood in our government. And they've given them 90 days to get back to them. So the information is due in this September. So Lynn Westmoreland has taken a very positive step. One of the few who's been able to publicly go out and try to find out how bad the Muslim Brotherhoods have actually penetrated our government. So if you need some additional information, I'd ask you, I've got some brochures on the table of Act for America. Please take those. I have got a handout for everyone here about the information that I presented tonight. It's a brief outline, so you can dwell on it later if you wish. There is my email address. It's also on the brochures that I have. should you need additional information. If you know other groups that might be interested in a talk like this, I know it's somewhat sobering, but I do think that it's needed because we're not being told the truth. Please get in touch with me. I'll be happy to come. It is no charge. I don't charge for any of this. So, questions? Yes, sir.
My question, from the beginning, you said we got the secular Muslims. What I'd like to know is what percentage do they represent in the Muslim field? My statement to that is, the problem with those secular Muslims, if the fundamentalists are in control of a section, they will join them. Right? And, or they will support them monetarily and emotionally out of their own defense. So they become part of the problem very easily. You know, I've done a lot of reading about these people, and I know a lot about them, and when you can turn around and take secular people and convert them to support your cause because they're afraid of you, right? The secular Muslims are not dormant. They need to be watched as closely.
Well, I would disagree with one of your statements that they can be converted easily. I don't think that's necessarily true. They can be converted if they buy into 7th century Islam. And that's the group of people we need to be very concerned about. That is the first step of the radicalization process. Number one, starting a firm belief of that 7th century form of Islam that we've been talking about, that's very militant, that's rooted in the Quran, and accepts those violent verses as dominant. Now, if you don't, if you firmly believe that jihad is an inner struggle, then you won't be converted. Now, you're absolutely correct that someone can be scared. Remember, apostasy is punishable by death. Remember what happened to Van Gogh in the Netherlands. He was killed. And all the cartoons of Muhammad in Europe, and what happened, and the reaction to the Florida pastor who was going to burn the Quran. So I don't think it's that easy to convert secular Muslims. It is if they have a propensity to believe in 7th century Islam. That's the first step. Now, how many are there? Everything I've read, the majority, the overwhelming majority of Muslims in this country are secular. There are about 3 million to 4 million Muslims in this country. We do not take a census on religious affiliation. So it's all estimated. The Council of American Islamic Relations puts out the figure of 7 million. Now, why do they do that? Because there's 7 million Jews in this country, and they don't want to have fewer Muslims. So that's the figure they perpetrate. They're not that strong in this country. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
If you follow the Quran as a secular Muslim, wouldn't you follow all the other beliefs in the Quran that you can lie to people and you can manipulate and do what they, even the
if you're going to
radicals do?
Well, that's assuming you know everything is in the Quran. How many of us know everything that's in the Bible? How many Christians know everything about the Bible? I'm learning something new in there every day. And I've been a Christian all my life. So when you say, and there's also an attempt by some Muslim leaders that dissuades Muslims from knowing the Quran as in detail as they should. So there is such a thing as a little ignorance here. But they do know that there's that form of jihad that is promoted, that's that inner struggle, and we all identify with that. All of us do, not just secular Muslims. We all have that problem every day. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but they're not as well versed as you might think in the Quran. And they're certainly not as well versed in this book. See how thick that is? This is Islamic law. How many saw the Learning Channel program, American Muslim? Anyone see that? That probably best represents what I'm talking about, a secular Muslim family. Because there on the couch you had an elderly Muslim woman in the hijab, the covering, and on the other side was her Muslim daughter in a miniskirt and a low-cut blouse, and she was just as Americanized as anybody else. And they were all gathered there, and the husband was the assistant chief of police of Dearborn, Michigan. Yes.
My question related to Dearborn, Michigan, in a concentrated Muslim area such as Dearborn. How successful have they been with the Sharia law or any?
Well, that is a very good question. There are several enclaves of Muslims in this country, one Dearborn, another one in Minneapolis. Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is just up the interstate from us, they're building a giant mega mosque there. And some of the reason that they're trying to do that is to get Islam firmly entrenched in the Bible Belt. And that's their first step. But certainly it is a lot easier when you have a firm concentration of Muslims in these tightly knitted communities. Now, I'm not going to stand here and say that everyone in Dearborn is a militant Islamist. I am sure there are many that are law-abiding citizens, very patriotic citizens. The trouble is, how do you tell? How do you tell the difference? Let me ask you this. How do you tell the difference between a white supremacist and a non-white supremacist? Excuse me?
Their haircut.
Their haircut. You know, how do you tell the difference between anyone that might be a threat to us? And certainly this is not the only threat. You know, it takes a while to get to know someone and trust them. All I'm saying is exercise prudence, trust but verify. Ask questions, if you will. Does anyone here know a Muslim? Have ever met one? And do you have any problems with it? You know, you have to answer these questions yourself. Yes?
When I was a child in the Philippines, and that was in the southern Philippines, and Islam was a big population here, and we were really scared of it.
And what?
We were scared of this. Where? The Philippines. When I was growing up.
Yeah,
And in fact, they wanted to have their own state. And Al-Qaeda used the Philippines, southern Philippines, as a testing ground for 9/11. They used the bombs, the homemade bombs, where every bus was timed. All at the same time, they were going to blow up the bombs in the buses. Except that there were some bus drivers who did not follow the routine. So they did not go off at the same time. And that was years before 9/11.
Chief, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One is, I think you gave us a great insight into the origins of, the actions of, but here's the reality in America. And I like to equate it like this. When European Christians came to America 400 years ago, they brought with them their beliefs and their faith. And within a short time, those that were here adopted that faith for the most part, Christianity. Different types of Christianity, but Christianity. Now we have a growing population of people from Islamic nations coming to our country. Even though we have job problems and hundreds of engineers laid off, we're giving carte blanche to Islamic nations to send their students here. And they're infiltrating our colleges and universities, like you pointed out. They're infiltrating neighborhoods. in the way that France and Spain and everywhere else where the Muslim Brotherhood has grown, it's all been incrementalism. And they teach us tolerance while they are the most intolerant. And I just posted a video last night of the latest incident in Dearborn, Michigan, where a group of Christian missionaries went at the Islamic festival, the same way that Jesus sent out the apostles 2 by 2 in Samaria and throughout the world. They were just handing out the Gospel of John, and they were stoned. And police officers were riding on horseback and looked the other way while this group was getting stoned. And then the deputy chief came with 14 officers, surrounded the Christians, and told them he didn't have enough men to protect them, so they needed to leave. And they asked for 2 officers to just escort them, and they refused to give them the 2 officers. Upon threat of arrest, they left because they said the Christians, who were not responding to the bottles and cans and stones being thrown at them, did not respond, but were told that they were inciting. And the deputy chief said, quote, "By you being here, you are inciting trouble." They have taken over the city. The people are afraid of them in Dearborn, Michigan. Same parts in little conclaves in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and now the latest in DeKalb County, Georgia, where they just took over a home recently, and you might have seen it on the news. They took over a home, and in that home they started a mosque in a neighborhood that's not zoned properly, and they put a huge addition to that home without filing for a building permit or a zoning ordinance change or anything. They've ignored the law. They've been before a judge 3 times, and they say, we don't recognize American law. Sharia law is all we recognize. This is what we're up against.
Any other questions?
I've got a question. I've got a question.
You were talking about those that were scared, like the ones that they were just walked over to another religion and were killed.
The what now?
Muslims. Yes, that was the thing, the apostasy. Could we protect those select individuals who want to do something different?
Who's going to protect them?
Can you repeat his question, please?
Well, he said, couldn't we protect any Muslim who wants to speak out? And especially those who want to renounce their faith and change over, convert to Christianity. That's what apostasy is, or to convert to some other religion. I think it would be very difficult for law enforcement to protect individuals that way. It's very, very cost prohibitive to afford individual protection. And then for how long will you do it? Because the contract is open-ended. There was a question way in the back.
Yeah, I respect the work you're doing, but I'm like with Ed. I think that the threat is more real. It's a lot closer. Their whole psyche is different than ours. They're completely wired backwards than the Western civilization that we're in. Their population in the prisons is growing extremely exponentially large. That's a part of the population you do not want to get this. They have issues with society to begin with. They now have an instrument of our device that is being exploited by those people going in. I know folks that do the missionary work in there, and they're just, quite frankly, their workload is cut down because the Muslims are taking over in there, and we have a growing prison population in the United States. It's, I think it's a lot more serious. I think that the people like in this room, we're very much individualists. No one's going to crowd me, no one's going to crowd me, no one's going to drive me in a direction I don't want to go for any reason, unless I want to go there and I deem it necessary. When you're saying all these other people that are like the little sheep and they're all dressing kind of nice and everybody's kind of neat in the square, that's good for that moment in time. But when their people want them to move, those sheep are going to move in the direction they're going to be pushed by force, by intimidation, just like in Germany. So I think
it's one of the most dire consequences our planet is facing, because they are getting these sheep people here in front of us to lull us, to think there are no wolves in the woods outside of the field that we're in, but they're going to lurch on us at the time they deem ready. And the time is coming close because our country is so financially broke. We've gone broke getting ready for a battle that hasn't come yet with our homeland security and all this other stuff. So I think that what we have to do in our own communities is really starting with our state legislature on those laws to protect our laws, one. That's the first defense. The second thing is mentally prepare yourself that it's coming and actually speak about it. I really think, and I'm glad that Ed and his group at First Baptist are taking lead on this, but I'm really unhappy with the churches in America who are not speaking out more from the pulpit. Everybody else is. They're not using the great facilities and the voices and the resources we have to push backwards on this and help those sheep in the middle see the flaw. But you're not going to get many of them back. I don't think you're going to get many of them back. The whole thing is keep that many more from going into it. Like you said, the number is smaller now than they say, but I see the rate growing exponentially, because once you have a discord in the communities like we have in our national Congress, when we have discords in our state Congress, when you have discords in employment, in feeding your family, that feeds right into the flame that they need to congeal those people to go that direction. So I think we're picking up a lot of speed, moving toward a greater growth of these Muslim brothers. I work in the medical area, and I go around. I never ever in the last 20 years saw a single Muslim, and now I'm going into practice after practice after practice, and those women now are Muslims, and they are not about to give ground. You talk about friendly, I don't see friendly anywhere. I'm a friendly guy. I don't see friendly anywhere. So I have to take back on that, what I see on the practical street. I don't have the power of a badge and a gun. I'm just a person walking, observing, and I'm extremely observant. I'm very successful in sales because I'm observant. And I see very differently the periscope I'm looking through, what's going on in our communities and our nation. And quite frankly, I don't really see a good end coming to it at this point in time.
I think I use the term due diligence, and that's perhaps the best advice I would give anybody. Keep your eyes open, your ears open, trust but verify. We have to be awake, and part of that is having some form of educational basis upon which we can base our opinions on. And that's part of what I was hoping to accomplish tonight. I don't know how well I did that, but remember, nobody wants to be called an Islamist or Islamophobe. No one wants to be called politically incorrect. And too many of our church leaders, are reaching out to Muslims now. They're calling it Chrislam. You know that? Chrislam. They're trying to find common ground between Christianity and Islam. It is a movement that's growing in our country. Brigitte Gabrielle, and you can look at this phone that I've asked you to, we're trying to get her to come here to speak. And I believe it's Ed's church that's taking the lead in that. You have no idea of the number of churches we've reached out to and have been turned down to have to sponsor her, because she is very controversial.
Great.
We're trying to get her for 2013 next year.
If you would like to be part of that, please make sure you're signed in with your email and phone number so we can let you know when that happens.
We're going to take one more question. One more.
Do you have any idea of the numbers in Georgia, like North Georgia, South Georgia, a lot of Georgia?
No, unfortunately, we don't. And as I said, everything is a wild guess estimate, because we do not, if you know what the census, we do not take any information about religious affiliation, and never know if they were telling the truth. So we don't know how many there are here.
Is it true we have over 56 or more mosques in Georgia?
What?
Mosques in Georgia, over 56, something like that.
name in the building.
All right, let's give a round of applause for those. We had two other candidates walk in. I'm going to let Lynn Brown come up and introduce them, and then they're going to speak just a little.
The other meeting got finished, so Judge Brown, would you stand up, please?
Handouts if anyone would like to take some tonight.
Well, everyone, there's going to be a primary July 31st, and Lillis doesn't have a Republican opponent, but she does have a Democrat come November. So, now, Mr. Buckford, if you would stand up.
I'm running for Superior Court Judge. It's a nonpartisan primary. It's on July 31st. I must win for the candidates coming behind in November to win. I ask for each and every one of your votes. Vote early if you want to. Early voting starts July 9th at Parker Road.
And often.
I know that you'll vote often, Mom. And so I need you to get out there and tell your friends to be sure to support me. I can assure you in the Rockdale Superior Court, we're going to follow the Constitution of Georgia and the Constitution of the United States.
I'll just say that if you want motivation of why you really need to get all the conservatives out to vote, is watch, go to edwardctracy.com, watch the South Rockdale Civic Association forum on the judges, and you'll see why we need to support Judge Brown, and we need to support Robbie Mumford, and we need to get out and to make sure that we protect our county.
Thank you, Eleanor. Tom, if you would, say a few words. We have to get started with our program. Y'all, this is Representative Tom Kirby.
Well, thank you. I certainly enjoyed the presentation tonight. I am a conservative constitutionalist. I normally, just about any time you find me, you'll have a pocket copy of me in my pocket. We've got a lot of things to do. We learned that again today. We need people in Atlanta that will stand up to Washington, tell them the 10th Amendment is alive and well. We've got some things that, even with their ruling today, that we've got to continue to do to, with the Medicaid. There's no sense that the way the ruling came down, that we can continue to fight that until we get, as Governor Romney said, if you want to get rid of Obamacare, the first thing we've got to do is get rid of Obama in November. So we're going to be working on that as well. All right. One other thing I would like to tell you, 4th of July, Loganville is having a parade honoring our hometown heroes. This is going to be one of the bigger things in the state of Georgia. We've got 2 of the 4 still living Tuskegee Airmen from World War II are in the parade. Lucasfilms has given us their flight simulator for the parade from the movie Red Tails. There's a lot of really special things that are going to go on with this parade. It starts at 9:50 in the morning on the 4th of July. Then the American Legion's traditional $5 barbecue afterwards, and then I'm sure there's fireworks in every county, but there's also big fireworks up there as well. But if there's not a parade or something in the morning, I'd certainly encourage you to do come up to Loganville, because it's going to be something pretty special for the 4th of July that we celebrate our Independence Day. So thank you.
Where's Loganville?
Okay, y'all, real quickly, I have some absentee ballot request forms. If any of you believe that you may be out of town or have some upcoming surgery, please take it, mail it in, or drop it off to Board of Elections so you can vote. Early voting starts July the 9th. You can go by the Board of Elections office at Parker Road and get it out of the way. We have a long ballot. There's going to be one Saturday voting, which will be July the 21st. So if any of you have family members at work, or y'all work and can't get off during the week, do it on Saturday or do it by mail. Finally, CJ would like me to introduce Nicole Holzenbeck. And Nicole, if you would come up here, please. Nicole will be helping CJ with the Young Republicans.